still, jockstrap. Do you do everything back to front the other side
There
of
was a
Adrian's
particular
wall?
kind of magic to watching four terrified teenagers stumble into Raph Skelton for the first time. Get Some In took the shared, half-remembered trauma of a generation of British men, national service, and turned it into something you could laugh at from the sofa. It was cruel and tender in the same breath, built on the friction between four mismatched recruits and the drill sergeant who tormented them, and it drew 15 million viewers a week doing it. But while Raph Skelton stayed frozen in 1955, the people behind it kept changing. Some of this cast are still working today, some are gone, and a couple of their real stories, it turns out, are just as dramatic as anything scripted for them. Marsh is the engine the whole show runs on, the bully you're supposed to hate, except you never quite manage it. Tony Selby was born on the 26th of February 1938 in Chelsea, and he was already 37 years old and a two-decade veteran of British television when Esmond and Larbe wrote the role specifically for him. What Selby brought to Marsh wasn't cartoon villainy, it was the exact rhythm of a real barrack room tyrant, a man who'd clearly said "bastard" 1,000 times before the cameras ever rolled, delivered with a Cockney authenticity he'd earned doing kitchen sink drama with Joan Littlewood's Theatre Workshop. Marsh represents the absurdity of small men handed small power, and the show never lets you forget that his cruelty comes from his own thwarted ambitions. Before Get Some In, Selby had quietly built a career as one of British TV's most reliable character actors, turning up in The Avengers and Callan. Afterwards, he found a second life as the roguish Sabalom Glitz in Doctor Who, and later a stint in EastEnders. Tony Selby died on the 5th of September 2021 in London, after contracting COVID-19 at the age of 83. Corporal Marsh endures because Tony Selby made cruelty feel almost lovable, and made sure you never forgot the sad little man underneath the shouting. Jakey is the show's rebellious heart, the ex-teddy boy who can't stand authority and doesn't pretend otherwise. Robert Lindsay was born on the 13th of December 1949 in Ilkeston, Derbyshire, and he was 25 and almost entirely unknown when he landed his first major television role as Jakey. What he brought to the part was a coiled, restless energy, a working-class swagger that never tipped into caricature, hinting at the star quality that hadn't been discovered yet. Jakey represents defiance against a system that's already stopped making sense. The character who says out loud what everyone else is only thinking. Lindsay left the show after 4 series when a bigger offer arrived, stepping straight into the title role of Citizen Smith, watched by 24 million people, and from there built one of the most garlanded careers in British acting. A BAFTA, a Tony, and multiple Olivier Awards, plus more than a decade as Ben Harper in My Family. Now 76, Lindsay is still working, currently appearing in new stage and screen projects in 2026. Jakey Smith endures because Robert Lindsay made a teenage tearaway feel like a star was about to happen right in front of you, and it was. Ken is the show's decent man, the one recruit who treats everybody, high or low, exactly the same. David Jansen, born David Jackson on the 30th of March 1950 in Clapham, was 25 when the series began, already a former RSC touring player who'd shared a stage with Diana Rigg and appeared as a child in A Hard Day's Night. What Jansen brought to Ken was a genuine sweetness that never curdled into naivety. A middle-class boy who falls for the wrong women and never quite loses his good nature, no matter how much RF life batters him. Ken represents the show's soft center, proof that kindness could survive national service even when nothing else about the character made him suited to it. Jansen stayed steadily working afterwards, taking over the role of Herr Flick in Allo Allo, playing the postman Michael for years on Keeping Up appearances, and continuing today as a respected stage actor and director. Now 76 in 2026, Jansen remains active in theater and pantomime. Ken Richardson endures because David Jansen made ordinary decency feel like its own kind of comedy. Taking over an established, beloved character is one of the hardest jobs in television, and Jakey's second act fell to Carl Howman. Howman was born on the 13th of December 1953 in Woolwich, London, and he was 24 when he stepped into the role for the final series in 1978, after Lindsay departed for Citizen Smith. What Howman brought was less swagger, more warmth. He softened Jakey's edges just enough to make the handover believable, drawing on the easy, cheeky charm he'd already shown in guest spots on The Sweeney and Minder. In this later stretch, Jakey shifts from pure rebellion towards something more resigned, a young man just trying to get through his 2 years intact. Howman's own career only grew from there. He became a household name as the womanizing painter-decorator Jacko in Brushstrokes, then reunited with Get Some In's writers for the whimsical Mulberry, and much later spent 2 years in EastEnders as Buster Briggs. In 2026, Howman is 72 and still working, having recently turned author, co-writing 2 best-selling books, including one narrated in his own voice. Jakey Smith endures because Carl Howman made a difficult inheritance look effortless and gave the character somewhere gentler to land. Bruce is the show's designated pessimist, the Scotsman who never lets anyone forget he didn't want to be there. Brian Pettifer was born on the 1st of January 1953 in Durban, South Africa, and raised largely in Glasgow. And he was 22 when he took on the role, having already made his film debut as a teenager in Lindsay Anderson's If. What Pettifer brought was a mournful, deadpan physical comedy. Bruce was built to be the butt of Marsh's jokes, and Pettifer played every humiliation with a wounded dignity that made the character sympathetic rather than pathetic. Bruce represents the reluctant conscript, the one who never accepts the premise of the whole enterprise, right down to finding brief happiness with a RAF corporal before the show cruelly takes it away. Pettifer's career quietly outlasted the sitcom by decades. He became a familiar face in Rab C. Nesbitt, worked with Robert Carlyle in Hamish Macbeth and The Legend of Barney Thompson, and picked up film credits in Amadeus and Vanity Fair along the way. Now 73 in 2026, Pettifer continues to work in British television and theater. Bruce Leckie endures because Brian Pettifer made misery genuinely funny without ever losing the ache underneath it. Matthew is the show's gentle soul, a vicar's son who plays the harpsichord and refuses, on principle, to hate even Corporal Marsh. Gerard Ryder was born on the 26th of October 1950 and was around 24 when the series began, cast as the shy, God-fearing recruit nicknamed Holy Joe. What Ryder brought to Matthew was a quiet sincerity that never tipped into mockery. The show could have made Matthew a joke, and instead, largely because of Ryder's playing, he became one of its more touching presences, fainting at the sight of blood, yet still passing his medic's exam through sheer will. Matthew represents faith and softness, surviving in an environment built to grind both out of a person. Unlike his 3 castmates, Ryder's post-Get Some In career never quite matched the show's visibility. He took supporting roles across British television through the 1980s, in Never the Twain, The Gentle Touch, and The Comic Strip Presents, remembered by friends as much for his music and storytelling as his acting. Gerard Ryder died on the 16th of June 2021 at the age of 70. Details of his passing were never widely reported, and he slipped away with far less fanfare than the role that made him a fixture in millions of living rooms. Matthew Lilley endures because Gerard Ryder made goodness watchable in a sitcom that gave him precious little credit for it. 50 years on, the Raf Skelton of Get Some In hasn't aged a day. It's still 1955 in there, still cruel and funny in exactly the same measure. But time did what time does to the people who built it. Some kept shining, carrying the show's legacy into decades of new work on stage and screen. Some fought quieter battles that never made the papers. And some are now gone, remembered by castmates and fans in ways far warmer than the characters they played on screen. So tell us, which recruit did you love most? Rebellious Jakey, decent Ken, mournful Bruce, or gentle Matthew? Drop it in the comments, hit like, subscribe, and stay right here with Retro Rewind for more casts then and now.